Hey everyone, Chris here. Today we are going over the fighter in the new player's handbook. We're going to go over all the class features. I'm going to show them up on the screen so that you can see exactly how they are worded. I'm going to go over any changes that we've seen from the playtest, from the 2014 rules. I am also going to go over the subclasses, which include the Battlemaster Champion, Eldritch Knight, and Psi-Warrior. I'll go over any of the changes we saw to any of those subclasses as well. I'm also going to rank those subclasses from 1 through 5 based on how good I think they are. This is, of course, just my opinion, so take or leave those rankings as you wish. They won't take much of the video. I will also ask that if you happen to be one of the few people who is watching this who is not already subscribed to this channel, please subscribe. I'm pushing for 100,000 subscribers. Every subscription counts. I would really appreciate it. Also, I will mention that this is the final video I'm doing before I go away at the end of July. So it is right now late July that I'm recording this video, and every video on my channel on the New Player's Handbook up to now was all pre-recorded and banked there. Patreon patrons saw them at the beginning of August, all of them. Now, I will have been continuing to bank new videos once I get back from going away, which will be on August 7th. So there are likely several more videos waiting on Patreon right now. If you want to check them out, there's a link in the video description. It's $3 a month to join. Then you can watch all the videos. And I don't put YouTube ads on them until after I make them public. So you can see them all without the ads. I would appreciate that as well. Patreon is my main source of income, so patrons really help me make this content and help me do what I do. Okay, all that said, we're going to go right into the fighter. So the first thing we're going to go over the fighter is the class chart. So we see two main changes here. We have a column for second wind and a column for weapon mastery. Of course, weapon mastery is new in the new rules, so nobody had it before. Fighters will get more weapons mastered than any other class. They're going to start at 3. Other classes that get weapon mastery start with 2. And the fighter will eventually get 6. And other classes that get weapon mastery are going to wind up with 4. The second column we see that we didn't see before was Second Wind. Second Wind is a first level feature that fighters can use to use a bonus action and heal a bit. And in the previous version of the fighter, they got 1 use of Second Wind every short rest. So as we can see now, it scales. We're going to start with 2 uses, and it's going to finish off with 4 uses. As for the core fighter traits, they're basically the same. Just starting equipment is slightly tweaked, but everything else is exactly the same as what you're used to. At level 1, we're going to get a fighting style. In the old version, these were considered to be fighter features, and then they were all listed under the fighter, and then some of them were listed separately under the ranger and under the paladin. Now fighting styles are feats. This is a mechanic that doesn't really matter. It's just where you find these things in the book. So the fighter will get a fighting style feat at first level, and they can pick any one they want. We can ignore their recommendations, just pick what fits your character, and the fighting styles are mostly the same, and I've gone over all the fighting styles in a previous video. We will also get Second Wind at first level, and as we saw on the chart, we're going to begin with 2 uses. The mechanics for it are the same, so we're going to use a bonus action. We're going to recover a d10 plus our fighter level in hit points. The difference are the number of uses. So yeah, we're going to start with 2 uses, and we're going to regain 1 expended use when we finish a short rest, and all expended uses after a long rest. So we'll always have more second wins than the 2014 fighter did, but not multiples of more, because we are still only recovering 1 on a short rest, same as the old fighter. And our final level 1 feature is weapon mastery. As you saw, we start with 3. And we can choose any simple or martial weapon, which is basically all the weapons. So choose 3 weapons and you're a master of all of them. With the new rules, melee is very good, melee weapons. Thrown weapons are pretty good. And ranged weapons aren't as good, but you probably still want to use them because sometimes you're out of range to use thrown weapons or melee weapons. So It should be pretty easy to come up with 3 right off the bat. And then, of course, as we gain more, it depends on your style. But if, like, for example, you're using 2-weapon fighting, you probably want 1 weapon with the Nick property, and you probably want 1 weapon that's also light that doesn't have the Nick property. And so we'll probably want mastery in both of them. So there will be reasons to get those additional masteries. So as you get them, you will find use for them. At level 2, we get Action Surge, which is almost the same as the version in 2014. The only difference is that when we take that additional action, it cannot be the magic action. This is a slight change from 2014, which didn't restrict the action we took with Action Surge, which meant that if we used it with a multi-class fighter / spellcaster, we could use Action Surge to cast 2 spells. We won't be able to do that anymore. But for 99% of fighters, this won't make a difference. And at level 2, we're going to get an additional feature. So this is a brand new feature. We did see it in the playtest, but we definitely didn't have it in 2014, and it doesn't replace anything. You have a mind for tactics on and off the battlefield. When you fail an ability check, you can expend a use of your second wind to push yourself towards success. Rather than regaining hit points, you roll a d10 and add the number rolled to the ability check, potentially turning it into a success. If the check still fails, this use of second wind isn't expended. So we get another use for second wind, and it's up to you whether you wish to use it. But certainly if you are doing some adventuring that is not combat, right? So you're maybe interacting with townsfolk or whatever, and combat doesn't seem likely, then using your second wind for something else seems really good to me. So I like this option. It also gives fighters a little more that they can do outside of combat, and that's always good. At level 3, we will pick our subclass, and then at level 4, we will get our first ability score improvement. And just like in 2014, fighters get more ability score improvements, so you'll see that we're getting ability score improvements at level 4, level 6, level 8, 12, 14, and 16. We'll also get one at 19. They label it as an epic boon feat because those are available at level 19, but it's still an ability score improvement. So we're getting the exact same ability score improvements as the 2014 fighter, which are 2 more than the other classes, except rogue. They're 1 more than the rogue. At level 5, we get extra attack as always, and that hasn't changed. And we also get Tactical Shift. This is also a brand new feature, so it doesn't replace anything. It's just an add-on. Whenever you activate your second wind with a bonus action, you can move half your speed without provoking opportunity attacks. And keep in mind that, of course, we have more uses of second wind than we used to as well, and they're scaling. So this will be a chance to improve your movement a number of times every day. All right, at level 9, we will get Indomitable. This is one of the most dramatic changes to the fighter. So the old fighter got Indomitable, and they got 1 use at level 9, 2 uses at level 13, 3 uses at level 17. And what they allowed is for the fighter could use an Indomitable, and they could re-roll a failed saving throw. And once they used the feature, they got it back after a long rest. This is the enhancement. If you fail a saving throw, you can re-roll it with a bonus equal to your fighter level. So as soon as we get this at level 9, that re-roll is made with a +9 to the roll. +9. You must use the new roll, and you can't use this feature again until you finish a long rest. And we're going to get additional uses at 13 and 17, same as the old fighter. But at levels 13, we're now talking a +13 to your reroll, and at level 17, a +17 to your saving throw, which is wild. I mean, other than just automatically succeeding on a saving throw like we saw with the Mage Slayer feat, this is just unheard of, these kinds of bonuses on saving throws. Think about playing a Paladin. I normally think of a Paladin as the class I want to play if I really want to make my saving throws, because you add your charisma modifier as a bonus to all saving throws. Now, Indomitable doesn't apply to all saving throws. It's just going to apply to the important ones. But +9 scaling to eventually +20. I mean, Wow, that is a huge improvement. Indomitable wasn't that great a feature because often DCs get to the point where you have such a small chance to succeed, and sometimes no chance to succeed, then getting a reroll isn't that big a deal because you'll probably just fail again. But now, when you use Indomitable, I would expect to succeed on the saving throw, even a difficult saving throw, unless you're really unlucky. And in some cases, you probably automatically succeed on the saving throw. So when it comes to saving throws, the fighter might be the new, top of the heap for making those important ones. This is just a dramatic change. Now, just to be fully transparent, I highly value saving throws when I play and when I make builds. If you're a fan of the channel, you already know that. But if you're newer to the channel, you might not realize that I value saving throws more than some other content creators do. So that probably affects how I view Indomitable. But I personally think I'm right. I personally think that, saving throws are super important. I've just failed too many important saving throws to not value them, or made important ones when other people are failing them. And I just think it's incredibly valuable to be able to make your saving throws. And Indomitable means the fighter, once you get to level 9, that is just such a massive improvement to this feature. And I'll be super excited to get it at level 9. I'll be even more excited to get this second use at level 13, and then the third use at level 17. I think I'll actually breathe easy about saving throws. And yeah, it's going to be tough to shut down a fighter when you have this kind of saving throw ability. We also get something else at level 9, and that's Tactical Master. This is brand new. We didn't even see this in the playtest. At level 9, the playtest got Master of Armaments, and it allowed you to switch the mastery property of a weapon after a long rest, and there were certain masteries you could choose, and blah, blah, blah. That's gone. This is the new one. When you attack with a weapon whose mastery property you can use, which should be all the time, you can replace that property with push, sap, or slow for that attack. So you can choose attack after attack what you want to do. So, for example, let's say you're using a weapon with the topple mastery, and then we attack with our first attack, and that enemy falls prone. Well, topple doesn't help us anymore. They're already prone. But maybe we can push them away or slow them, or both. So Tactical Master is going to be very handy, I think. Now, obviously, if you're using a weapon that already has the push, sap, or slow property, you do only get 2 additional options instead of 3. So it's something you might want to consider when you're selecting your weapons, but honestly, I don't think it's that big a deal. I think I would still use a weapon I want to use, even if I only get 2 options. Getting those 2 additional options is still a handy feature to have. Level 11, we get 2 extra attacks. Different name, but it's the same thing. It's the scaling of our extra attack feature, so we get our 3rd attack. It's exactly the same as the fighter at level 11 in the old rules, which is always a really nice level for fighter. Then at level 13, we get studied attacks. We saw this in the playtest. This replaces nothing. It's brand new as well. You study your opponents and learn from each attack you make. If you make an attack roll against a creature and miss, you have advantage on your next attack roll against that creature before the end of your next turn. I mean, if you've played D&D, you've probably played a weapon user where you've had your turn, you have multiple attacks, and you miss, and it sucks. Studied attacks means you're going to have fewer of those turns with a fighter, so that's good. And then level 19, Epic Boon, is just an ability score increase, and at level 20, we get 3 extra attacks, which is the same capstone that fighters always got. It's always been a good capstone. I have previously stated a number of times that I figured that the third extra attack should come at level 17, so it kind of matches up to the scaling of cantrips like Eldritch Blast. That said, at level 17, we're getting a 3rd use of Indomitable, which is pretty good. So at least at level 17, I do feel like I'm getting something pretty good. I should mention also, at level 17, we get a 2nd use of Action Surge. Also the same as the old version, but getting the 3 Indomitable at level 17, although it's the same, because Indomitable is so much better, it is far more impactful than it used to be. So here is our Battle Master. It looks like a Dragonborn, and they've got a bow and they've got a sword, and I do think we're going to see this a lot. We're going to see a lot of fighters and other classes that use weapons have both ranged weapons and melee weapons and switch between them more fluidly than they ever have before. The reasons for this include, number one, it's far more easy to switch between weapons now. Since before it required interaction, now it can be done as part of the attack. And the second is that ranged probably isn't as good as melee anymore. So you probably want your character to be okay at range, because sometimes you're stuck using ranged. Sometimes that's the only way you can acquire a target. But as we get closer, then you probably want to switch to a thrown weapon. And as you get closer yet, to straight out melee, because that tends to be the way that they're ranked in terms of power in the new rules. Ranged is the weakest, thrown next, then melee. So I would imagine a lot of my fighters, or probably most of my fighters, are going to have all 3 options. All right, and at level 3, we're going to begin with combat superiority, and it is identical. So I'm not going to bother reading it through. Everything is the same as it was in the 2014 rules. We also get Student of War at level 3, and this one has been improved slightly. So it says you gain proficiency with one type of artisan's tools of your choice, and that was the old feature in 2014. The new feature says also, and you gain proficiency in one skill of your choice from the skills available to fighters at level 1. So a Battle Master will have an additional skill proficiency over what they did before. At level 7, we get Know Your Enemy, which has changed significantly from the 2014 rules. The old version took a minute to complete, didn't have limited uses, so you could use it as often as you like when you're in the situation where you could use it, which was fairly rare. And then you could learn whether a creature has a higher or lower score for you for physical abilities, their hit points, their armor class, class levels if they had any, and fighter levels if they had any. Of course, a lot of NPCs don't have levels. If we look at the NPC stat blocks, they don't have fighter levels or levels of any kind, which made that feature a little bit weird. It was also hard to use. The 1 minute to analyze your enemy, it doesn't come up a lot. So here's the new version. It says, as a bonus action, you can discern certain strengths and weaknesses of a creature you can see within 30 feet of yourself. You know whether that creature has any immunities, resistances, or vulnerabilities, and if the creature has any, you know what they are. That's pretty good. Once you use this feature, you can't do so again until you finish a long rest. You can also restore a use of the feature by expending one superiority die, no action required. And remember, you get all your superiority dice back on a short rest. So if you are willing to expend the resources, you can use this regularly. Obviously, you're going to want to use this in any combat where you're fighting an enemy and you think it might have resistances or immunities or vulnerabilities, but you can't know for sure what they are. Then it's probably worth a bonus action to find out. And that might affect, what attacks you do or what spells your spellcasters are casting. So, I mean, this isn't a super powerful feature, but it's definitely more useful than the one they had before. Now I'm just going to show up on screen level 10, 15, and 18. Level 10 and 18 are just the scaling of the size of your superiority die, which is no different than the old version. The thing that has changed is the level 15 feature, Relentless. The old version said you regain a superiority die when you roll initiative. So you got one additional superiority use per combat. This new version is pretty crazy. Once per turn, when you use a maneuver, you can roll a d8 and use the number rolled instead of expending a superiority die, which is going to be any time that, we're through the initiative order in combat. You're going to get turns, and you're basically going to be able to do free maneuvers as long as we're using a d8 instead of our d10 or d12, depending on our level. That's a pretty small downgrade in order to be able to use it without a resource. So, very powerful feature. And do not worry, I am not going to read through all the maneuvers. I am going to read over the ones that have been significantly changed. But Ambush has not changed. Bait and Switch has not changed. Commander's Strike, the only difference is the chosen creature can make a weapon attack or an unarmed strike. Used to be just a weapon attack. Commanding Presence has not changed. Disarming Attack required a weapon attack before, now works with any attack. We're going to see this a lot. Stuff that works for any attack when it used to be just weapon attacks. So technically speaking, if you're multiclassed with Warlock, you could use this with Eldritch Blast, right? That's an example. Distracting Strike, same thing, now works with any attack. Evasive Footwork, the 2014 version said roll superiority die and add it to your armor class while you take your move. This new version says as a bonus action, you expend one superiority die and take the disengage action. You also roll the die and add the number rolled to your armor class until the start of your next turn. So we're now not provoking opportunity attacks at all when we move, and after we're done moving, we get an armor class boost, which is good because Evasive Footwork was pretty lousy before. This makes it a lot better. Feinting Attack has no change from the old version. Goading Attack basically is the same, except it now works with any attack. Lunging Attack we should talk about. So the 2014 version increased the reach of a melee weapon attack by 5 feet, and you added the die to damage when you used it. So just for that one attack, you increased your reach. Now it says, as a bonus action, you can expend one superiority die and take the dash action. If you move at least 5 feet in a straight line immediately before hitting with a melee attack as part of the attack action on this turn, you add the superiority die to the attack's damage roll. So instead of just reaching really far, we're actually moving up to the enemy. So that's the main difference there. I think this is better because fighters tend to make more than one attack, and I don't want to have to expend multiple superiority dice to hit the same target more than once. Maneuvering Attack, mostly the same. It used to require a weapon attack, now it works with any attack. Menacing Attack, used to require a weapon attack, now works with any attack. Parry, so the 2014 version reduced the damage you took by your superiority die plus your dexterity modifier as a reaction, and it now is going to allow you to choose either dexterity or strength. So parry was only really good on dexterity-based fighters before. Now if you have a strength-based fighter, parry is good for you as well. Precision Attack used to require a weapon attack, now works with any attack. Pushing Attack used to require a weapon attack, now works with any attack. So Rally, it says, as a bonus action, you can expend one superiority die to bolster the resolve of a companion. Choose an ally of yours within 30 feet of yourself who can see or hear you. That creature gains temporary hit points equal to the superiority die roll plus half your fighter level rounded down. The old version did not have a range limit, but the temporary hit points given was the result of the roll of your superiority die plus your charisma modifier. If you have played fighters, you will know that having a good charisma isn't that something that you can really afford to do. I mean, you might be able to do a 12, maybe. Now we're adding half our fighter level, so at least it will be +1, starting at level 3, and this is going to scale with our level. Then Riposte is the same, except it used to allow a melee weapon attack. It now allows a melee weapon attack or an unarmed strike. Sweeping Attack now works with unarmed strike as well. Tactical Assessment has not changed, and Trip Attack now works with an unarmed strike. So that is the Battle Master. What we saw are what started with a good subclass. I think most people agree that the Battle Master, as far as fighter subclasses go, is one of the better ones. And what we saw is that the level 7 feature got better. We technically got another skill at level 3. That's not a big deal. The fighting style or the maneuvers have mostly stayed the same or mostly the same, but there have been a couple that have been improved so that we have more options, like more viable options than we did before, though I'm not sure the options as a whole are more powerful. But I appreciate being able to make Battle Masters in different ways and still be viable. The biggest boost we see is at level 15. Level 15 got a pretty substantial improvement where we can use maneuvers just all the time. That's going to be the point where if your Battle Master is making the attack action, at least one of those attacks is going to benefit from a maneuver. So the Battle Master is pretty good. I think I got to give it a 4 out of 5. We are now going to talk about the champion subclass. Personally, this has never been a subclass that appeals to me because I think in terms of difficulty, it tends to be the easy one. There's the fewest options. The benefits are pretty much all baked in. And I didn't find that there were a lot of ways to make it really work. And I considered it one of the weaker fighter subclasses, to be honest. So I was expecting improvements in the new version, even if the complexity isn't increased that much. So let's take a look at the features. All right, so at level 3, we're going to get 2 features, Improved Critical and Remarkable Athlete. And Improved Critical is basically the same. It allows you to get a critical on a 19 or 20. The only difference is it works with unarmed strikes now, didn't used to. Of course, you need some method to deliver more than 1 point of damage with your unarmed strike, or that doesn't make a difference. But if you have like the unarmed combat fighting style where you're doing a d8 damage, it will make a difference. And Remarkable Athlete has changed. It says, thanks to your athleticism, you have advantage on initiative rolls and strength athletics checks. In addition, immediately after you score a critical hit, you can move half your speed without provoking opportunity attacks. The old version said you got to add half your proficiency bonus rounded down to any ability check using strength, dexterity, or constitution that didn't already have proficiency bonus added. And it also added your strength modifier in feet to running long jumps. So thematically, this is very similar, right? So jumps are athletics, so getting advantage means increasing jumps, and so the old version increased jumps as well. The old version, technically, initiative is an ability check, so if you added half your proficiency bonus to your dexterity checks, that adds to initiative as well. Here we're just going to get advantage on initiative. This is simpler, does a similar thing, and I would say it's better. I would rather have advantage on initiative rolls than have a +1 or +2. I should also mention that Remarkable Athlete was a 7th level feature on the 2014 fighter. So moving it to level 3 opens up level 7. So we put additional fighting style there, which used to be level 10. So as you can see, we're just kind of piling up more features at earlier levels. Otherwise, it's the same feature. You can pick a second fighting style. And this allows for level 10 to be an entirely new feature, Heroic Warrior. The thrill of battle drives you toward victory during combat. You can give yourself Heroic Inspiration whenever you start your turn without it. Heroic Inspiration is very good. It's a reroll on anything you want. Your damage roll, your attack roll, your saving throws, your ability checks, whatever. And this doesn't replace anything because additional fighting style, which used to be at level 10, we're just getting earlier. We're getting everything else earlier. So this comes in as a brand new feature. Every time you start your turn without Heroic Inspiration, you get it, is really good. I mean, just without a lot of thought at all, it's advantage on an attack roll every turn that you didn't have otherwise. So yeah, very strong feature at level 10 for the champion. Then at level 15, Superior Critical, we got this before. The only difference is, same as the first one, that it works with unarmed strikes as well. And then at level 18, we have Survivor. So I'm just going to read this through. So this is different. It says you attain the pinnacle of resilience in battle, giving you these benefits. Defy death. You have advantage on death saving throws. Moreover, when you roll an 18 to 20 on a death saving throw, you gain the benefit of rolling a 20 on it. If you roll a 20 on a death saving throws are made, by the way, at the start of your turn. So if you roll a 20, you recover 1 hit point. That means you immediately regain consciousness, and you can take your turn. You can get up and make your attacks or do whatever you were otherwise going to do. So it's really good to get a 20 on a death saving throw. If you have an 18 to 20 and advantage, your odds are much higher, which I haven't calculated. Give me a moment, going to calculate it. 36%. All right, so when you make a death saving throw as a champion fighter, you have a 36% chance of popping immediately back up to 1 hit point. That's really good. And then Heroic Rally. At the start of each of your turns, you regain hit points equal to 5 plus your Constitution modifier. If you're bloodied in this version says that if you are below half your maximum hit points, you're bloodied. Okay? And it normally has no mechanical impact except for features like this. and you have at least 1 hit point. So if you're unconscious, you don't benefit from Heroic Rally. You got to make your death saving throw and count on that 36%. But as long as you have at least 1 hit point, you're getting 5 plus your Constitution modifier, which is probably around a +3, right? So around 8 hit points, could be 7, could be 9. And the old version was just Heroic Rally. So this Defy Death, that's just been added. Champion has seriously been boosted. Their features of 10th level or lower have all been packed down to 7th level or lower, and some of them have been improved. And then level 10, you're going to get a brand new feature that's quite good. And your level 18 feature has been improved as well. So the champion is definitely better. Still not my cup of tea, but if it's your cup of tea, know that I would probably think they're now probably a 3 out of 5, which for the champion is not bad, because I definitely wouldn't put the old champion 3 out of 5. Here's our artwork for the Eldritch Knight that I think is pretty darn cool. I like this artwork a lot. They look pretty badass. And Eldritch Knights are pretty badass. Pretty significant changes for the Eldritch Knight. So at level 3, we're going to get 2 features. We'll go through them one at a time. The first is spellcasting. It is the same as the 2014 version, including the chart, except that the 2014 version, and this is a dramatic change, by the way, the 2014 version restricted you to primarily evocation and abjuration spells from the wizard list, and we no longer have that restriction. That is a big enhancement to the Eldritch Knight. So yeah, that is a big improvement to spellcasting. By the way, I should mention you can also use an arcane focus, which you couldn't do before. That's a minor change. And at level 3, we have Warbond. And Warbond is essentially the same. There were some restrictions added here that are kind of clarifications and common sense stuff. It says you can't bond a weapon bonded by another fighter or magic item that somebody else is attuned to. Those are no longer available for Warbond because they created some clunkiness in the rules, right? Which Warbond applies if multiple fighters are bonded to the same weapon. So I consider those clarifications, not nerfs. I should also mention as well, one thing that didn't change as well is with multi-classing. We saw a change with Ranger and Paladin, where if they multi-class, now they round their level up when determining spellcasting progression. Not the case with Eldritch Knights. They're still rounding down. So it's 1/3 of your fighter level rounded down in terms of spellcasting progression. Maybe the biggest enhancement to Eldritch Knights is at level 7 with War Magic. The old version allowed an attack with a weapon as a bonus action when you cast a cantrip with your action. Now, you get the Blade Singer extra attack. So when you take the attack action, you can replace one of your attacks with a cantrip, which means you're not using up your bonus action anymore. It also means that you're going to benefit from your extra attack and all that stuff, because with the old version, if you cast a cantrip, then you make one weapon attack as a bonus action, and so one cantrip, one weapon attack. And that's what we're going to have at level 7, except we're not expending a bonus action. And then at level 11, we're now adding additional attacks that you wouldn't have done with the old Eldritch Knight. So this is a huge improvement. Should also point out that the new True Strike cantrip is available to the wizard. Thus, it is available to Eldritch Knights, and it's a pretty good option, I think, for an Eldritch Knight, especially if you're playing an Eldritch Knight. Like, let's say you're playing a strength-based Eldritch Knight, and you want to use a bow. Well, you can use True Strike with a bow now, and now we could use our intelligence modifier for that range attack. Just one range attack, but a pretty good one because we're also increasing the damage because it's a True Strike. A nice little option for Eldritch Knights, I think. At level 10, we get Eldritch Strike, and it is the same. You learn how to make your weapon strikes undercut a creature's ability to withstand your spells. When you hit a creature with an attack using a weapon, that creature has disadvantage on the next saving throw it makes against a spell you cast before the end of your next turn. The one thing I can think of here where I think this might work differently is because of how our level 7 feature changed. So if we, make our first attack and hit somebody with a weapon attack, And then we cast a cantrip that requires a saving throw. They would have disadvantage on it. I could see that combination coming up over and over and over again because, of course, leveled spells, Eldritch Knights just have very small numbers of them. Arcane Charge, level 15, also has not changed. When you use your action surge, you can teleport up to 30 feet to an unoccupied space you can see. You can teleport before or after the additional action. One thing I will say is this feels less special now than it did in the 2014 rules because if you've been watching my videos, you'll notice that everybody's teleporting all over the place. If I'm playing an Eldritch Knight and I'm beside a World Tree Barbarian at level 15, they're just popping everywhere, every turn, 60 feet at a time. And I've got, one action surge at level 15 and 2 at 17. So I get 2 teleports. Doesn't seem like such a big deal anymore. I still think it's all right. Teleporting can be useful. So, it's okay. But I don't think it's a great feature. And then improved war magic. I'll just mention the old version was kind of like the level 7 feature of the old version, except it included level spells. So if you cast a leveled spell with your action, you could make a weapon attack as a bonus action. Okay, I guess. Here, when you take the attack action on your turn, you can replace 2 of the attacks. So you have to give up 2 attacks. So keep in mind, at level 17, you have at least 3 attacks. At level 20, we're going to have 4 attacks. But when you take the attack action on your turn, you can replace 2 of the attacks with the casting of 1 of your level 1 or 2 wizard spells that has a casting time of an action. And this could be combined with our level 7 feature. So let's say we have 3 attacks. We could use 2 of them to make a leveled spell casting and 1 of them to cast a cantrip and not attack at all. So that's pretty cool, right? That you can do that. And I mean, you could potentially have more than 3 attacks with your attack action at level 17 because, if you have the nick property on your weapon, then that would count as one of the attacks of your attack action, and that gives you 4, right? So there are ways we can make this cost not feel as dramatic. I think it's all right. I don't think it's a fantastic 18th level feature, but I think it's pretty good. Eldritch Knight, though. There's some huge boosts to it. I think it's doing very, very well. I think is the most powerful of the new fighter subclasses, or the revised fighter subclasses, if you will. There's 2 different fighter subclasses now based on intelligence, this one and Psi-Warrior, and this is the one that I think is by far the better of the 2. I think this is a 4.5 out of 5. And speak of the devil, let's talk about the Psi-Warrior. There have been a few changes from Tasha's, but if you are familiar with the Tasha's Cauldron of Everything version of the Psi-Warrior, know that it is very similar to what it was in that book. All right, so psionic power, it goes further than this, but it would look really small on your screen if I put it all on there. And there's only 2 things I need to tell you about psionic power. Look at your Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, Psi-Warrior. These are the changes. First off, you can see there's a chart here where it shows the number of dice and the size of the dice that you get based on your fighter level. These are the same as if you did a Tasha's Psi-Warrior and went straight fighter. However, if you multi-class, the old version would still scale because it was based on your proficiency bonus, which continues to go up after you leave fighter. This one doesn't. So now this is totally based on your fighter level, which means as long as you are a straight fighter, you won't notice any changes here. But if you multi-class, it will be slower or stop altogether if you leave fighter completely. The second change is that we now get one of our psionic dice back after a short rest. The old version got them all back after a long rest, but none back on a short rest. So that is technically an improvement, which means if you are a straight Psi-Warrior, psionic power is better. If you multi-class out of Psi-Warrior into some other class, it is probably worse. It depends how many short rests you get and how much multi-classing out of Psi-Warrior you do. But with those psionic dice at level 3, we have Protective Field, Psionic Strike, Telekinetic Movement. They are identical. No changes at all to these features. At level 7, we get Telekinetic Adept. Once again, don't need to go through it. It's identical to Tasha's. In fact, I'm just going to show you level 10, level 15, and level 18. They're all up on your screen. no changes whatsoever. So Psi-Warrior has had almost no changes from Tasha's. The only real difference is you get one psionic die back on a short rest, and if you multi-class out, your psionic dice stops scaling. That's it. So, how is the Psi-Warrior doing? Well, I've always considered the Psi-Warrior okay. It's not a bad subclass, and I don't think it necessarily got worse. It definitely got worse if you're planning multi-classing, but if you're planning single-classing, it actually got better. So overall, about the same. I think it's a 3 out of 5. It's okay. But when I look at, if I'm going to make an intelligence-based fighter, and I can be a Psi-Warrior or an Eldritch Knight, I'm going to have a hard time picking Psi-Warrior when Eldritch Knight is right there. It's okay. On the upside, there's no bad subclasses here. They're all at least decent. But Eldritch Knight, I think, is kind of the premier one. And Battlemaster looks really good, too. If you liked Battlemaster before, if you get to level 15, you're going to like it even more. So that is the fighter. What I really noticed with the fighter is big changes happened to the base class. Massive improvements to the base class, including at higher tiers. They changed to Indomitable, and the scaling is dramatic. So 3 rerolled saving throws at level 20 with a plus 20 modifier. Think about that. Who else can do anything like that? That's like 3 legendary resistances that you just gave to the fighter. That is so amazingly good. And so when we talk about martials, right, martial classes, these are the classes that don't use spells. So we're talking about the rogue, we're talking about the fighter, we're talking about the barbarian, and arguably the monk. Whether, the monk's features are kind of spell-like is certainly a conversation that we don't need to have right now. So when we're talking about martials, one of the main concerns are their performance at higher levels, because at low levels, martials do just fine. But at higher levels, when you're competing with high-level spells, then these classes need boosts at those levels. And as I mentioned in my previous video about barbarians, I'm not sure they got a lot at those higher levels, but the fighter got more. And not just studied attacks, but Indomitable as well. Or not just Indomitable, but studied attacks as well. Either way, I think the fighter did better than the barbarian at those higher levels. So doesn't mean that your high-level fighter is as good as the high-level full spellcaster. Not going to say that at all. But that gap between them, I do think, has reduced somewhat. That's my opinion anyways. As far as the fighter in general go, I'm looking forward to playing my next fighter, but they're going to be an Eldritch Knight. Got to be honest. Going to be an Eldritch Knight for sure. So in my next video, which is, I'm not going to be recording for a while yet, but you will see it very soon. And I believe I decided the next class I wanted to go over was the monk, because the monk, of course, had dramatic changes. So I hope you'll join me for that. Otherwise, until next time, I'm going to sit back, relax, and have some fun. D&D is for everyone. Thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you soon.